Well, last week we talked about what really bad worship is. Today we're going to talk about what really good worship is, and it involves just a couple things: praying, singing, and who knows, maybe even an earthquake will happen. And in today's Bad Doctrine of the Week, we're going to talk about a woman who tragically is trading her value in the image of God for money. It's very sad, but we're going to talk all about it today on the Digging Deeper podcast. Well, hello and welcome to the Digging Deeper podcast, where our goal is to dig into that week's sermon, so that way we might just dig it a little bit deeper into our hearts. We are so glad that y'all joined us today on this beautiful morning or evening or hot summer day, or whenever you're watching. It could be raining, who knows. Anyways, my name is Chris Brown, and I'm the associate pastor here at First Baptist Azle.
My name's Jacob Belding. I'm the connections minister here at First Baptist Azle.
And back in sound.
What's up?
Judah Sandiford. You have to apologize to everyone. I got thousands of comments about you not being here last week.
I don't apologize.
I don't accept my cancellation. All right. Yeah, Judah's back over there. And I feel a lot better now because someone's monitoring the video and the audio, so that way I don't have to wonder if everything's destroyed once we're done. But anyways, we're glad that y'all joined us here today. This past week, Pastor Lee got into a second week of worship. And the previous week, he talked about really bad worship, and we had a lot of fun with that here. Judah, you missed out.
Big time.
But this week, we're moving into what is good worship. And I just want to say, Lee missed an opportunity here. So, Judah, last week, the sermon was entitled Really Bad Worship. This week, he wants to talk about good worship. So what should the title be?
Good worship?
Really good worship. Really bad worship? Really good worship. That's not the title. The title is The Power of Wonderful Worship. That's okay, though, because, it's fun. It's fun. That's what I would have done. But anyways, this week's sermon is The Power of Wonderful Worship. And it's basically approaching, like let's take a look at what he called a worship service in the Bible, and see what they did in that little worship service, and how God responded to that, and what can we glean off of that, of how we can worship and how we can come to God in our own lives. And it's really simple. There's 2 points to this whole thing. We might get out here pretty quick today. There's 2 points. What is wonderful worship? Well, 1, they prayed, and 2, they sang. That's it.
And that's it. 2 points.
They prayed, they sang. And then lots of other things happen, which we're going to get into, which probably doesn't happen in a normal worship service, but we'll find out. Anyways, last week we talked about bad worship experiences. Have you had good worship experiences?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I sure have. What about you, Chris? Have you had good worship experiences?
Every single week here at First Baptist Azle.
Absolutely.
There's not a single bad experience
That's
I've
like the normal
ever had.
Right.
Especially when Roxanne's not singing. I'm just kidding, Roxanne. We're going to see if Roxanne actually watches this.
Yeah, that's right. We'll find out.
Good worship experiences are great. And you get to go home and you're like, man, worship the Lord today, learned something, applied something, all those things. There's something about, we talked about last week, that it's not about the experience.
Right.
But there's also at the same time that we're not chasing experience, that whenever we're coming before God humbly and worshiping Him faithfully, that a lot of times there are experiences that come out of that. And so it's not a bad thing. It's not what we chase, but at the same time, the Lord blesses us.
Yeah, that's right. We get to enjoy those things sometimes.
Yep. Okay. I'll tell you this. Some of the best worship experiences I've had have been in my car.
Yep. Same here.
Whenever, you're just listening to a song and the song hits you just a little bit different.
Oh, yeah.
The words speak to you just a little bit different.
Hits you in the feels sometimes.
Yep.
It's like, oh, man.
Well, we're going to see today, the passage that Pastor Lee went to is Acts 16. And this is when Paul and Silas were in prison. And this is probably the most unideal worship experience that someone could have. Yet, may be the most, one of the most God-moving worship experiences. And so it's going to, out the gate, show us that it's not your environment that's going to determine whether worship is going to be good or bad,
Right.
or whatnot. Anyways, so we're going to be in Acts 16, starting in verse 29. Do you want to go ahead and read that, and we'll get kicked off?
Yes. All right, Acts 16, starting in verse 29. And the jailer called for lights and rushed in, and trembling with fear he fell down before Paul and Silas. Then he brought them out and said, Sirs, what must I do to be saved? And they said, Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household. And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds. And he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before them. And he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God.
Yep. So that's the tail end of the
Yes.
story there. Sorry, I didn't realize that. So let's give a little bit of backstory.
Okay.
As to what's going on here. You want to explain that?
Yeah, sounds good. So the backstory really starts back in verse 22. Maybe it'd be helpful just to go on and read that.
Sure.
So starting in verse 22, here's the kind of the backstory. So that was the result. Here's what happened before. Acts 16:22. The crowd joined in attacking them, and the magistrates tore the garments off them and gave orders to beat them with rods. And when they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, ordering the jailer to keep them safely. Having received this order, he put them into the inner prison and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken. Then immediately all the doors were open, and everyone's bonds were unfastened. When the jailer woke and saw that the prison doors were open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried with a loud voice, Do not harm yourself, for we are all here.
Yep. So overall, here's what's going on. You've got Paul and Silas who were taken, beaten, stripped of their clothes, thrown in jail. And while they were in jail, they worshipped. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But they worshipped, and as they were worshiping, a earthquake happened. Their chains fell off. Doors opened. The jailer drew his sword to kill himself. We're going to talk about that a little bit more as well. But they said, don't do that. The guy actually got saved from this moment, and so on and so forth. All that happened and whatnot. But what we're particularly looking at is while they were worshiping in the prison, we see them do two very specific things. Mm-hmm. What are those things?
The first one is that they were praying.
They were praying.
This is about midnight, is what it says. Like, oh man, right there in the middle of the night, it's dark. Like you said, they've been beaten. Their feet are placed in stocks. There's no getting comfortable there. They have nothing else to do, even. Sleep. Pastor Lee even mentioned sleep is probably going to be elusive for these guys. They've just been beaten, thrown in jail. It's probably hard to sleep, I would imagine, as he pointed out, after you've been beaten that way. And so what do? They pray.
Yeah. And this is probably, like you said, isn't the type of prayer that they're about to go sleep and they just, like, as they're falling asleep, they start praying.
Drift off.
It's not like, your end of the day prayer, right. As you fall asleep mid-prayer.
Right.
Not one of those. This is probably fervent prayer in their time of bad circumstances, which brings up the first thing that Pastor Lee was talking about is that their worship wasn't driven by their circumstances.
Right.
It's not because like everything's going great and that's what drove them to worship. It was like actually the opposite. Everything was going awful, and instead of seeing that as a time to sit and complain, I think we've talked about this before. That if I was thrown in jail for my faith, I would be writing Congress, trying to get everyone to get me out rather than just sit and pray to God. But Paul used his bad circumstances not as opportunities for complaining, but rather as opportunities for worship. And that tends to happen in life, right? It's like we often hear, when people have, major life events that, whether it's the loss of a loved one or loss of a job or financial issues or relationship issues or whatever it may be, it's in times of great distress that people find their way back to God. Why do you think that is?
I think part of it is, especially when you're in a crisis, the normal everyday, stuff, the things that you might otherwise be doing day in and day out, I think you kind of become detached from those things easier. So if, things are going great, maybe I've had a long day at work and I'm kind of tired. I just want to sit and in front of the TV and watch a show or whatever, just kind of and then go to sleep and then wake up the next morning.
Tune out the world and because there's no like great impending doom happening.
If something's really really weighing on you, then the normal forms of, like in this case, entertainment, aren't going to provide a distraction if those things are weighty enough. Mm-hmm. So if you've experienced loss or you're stressed or anxious about like financial things or relationship things, then it's like, okay, this has my attention and my focus. Mm-hmm. And so, I need to take those things to God. And I think it's easier in those times to do that, to sort of disengage from those things we might otherwise be doing.
So that's interesting. So what we would typically call distractions. So let's like say TV or our phones or social media. We would typically call those distractions, but in reality, it's the bad circumstances that distracts us from the distractions, right? So it's kind of like stepping in front of what was the distraction and distracting us from what we're trying to distract us from.
Right.
And so it's like when everything's going great, all of these distractions work as they're intended and distract us and cure our boredom or apathy or whatever. And it's only whenever there's dire circumstances surrounding us that those distractions no longer work anymore. Right. And now we're stuck with the reality of life.
Right. And they sort of serve to like jolt us and kind of wake us up. And it's like, oh man, especially when, whatever the circumstances are relatively unexpected. It's not something that you're like prepared for or you're like kind of, ready to have to deal with. And then, I think it serves to kind of shock us awake, and we realize that, oh man, whatever the circumstance isn't a good one, and then that has all your focus, and even a momentary distraction, you're going to go right back to the circumstance or whatever sort of crisis it is that you're in, and from there we just pray. Yeah.
I'll have that. So whenever there's like an issue in my life, be it something major or something small, usually it's something small, like that issue be on my mind, and then I'll distract myself from it and not think about it. But then like in watching TV or just sitting there or doing whatever, I'll just feel this low level anxiety sitting on me, and I'll actually ask myself, I'm like, why am I anxious? Like why do I feel this way? And I have to like kind of burrow into my mind to figure out what exactly is causing me anxiety, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, it's that thing.
That thing that I was trying to forget about. I can't. That's still there.
So even whenever we do successfully distract ourselves, our bodies are smarter than that, and they know that even though you're not consciously thinking about in that moment, in our subconscious, it's actually weighing on us.
Yeah, it's there.
And that we're getting a little bit off. Yeah. But on a side note, that's why Jesus calls us to do one of two things with our anxiety: to either, if you can do something about it today, take action and go do something about it, and if you can't, then it's tomorrow's problem. Yep. Put it to the side, compartmentalize, and deal with it tomorrow if it's not a today's problem, kind of thing. Anyways, all that said. So bad circumstances. We tend to not have the ability to distract ourselves from it with the normal ways of life. So now we just got to deal with it. And I've seen people go two ways with this. They either like go hard against God and basically blame God for everything and just bolt, or they'll use that as a time of like revival in their own lives to come back to God. One that made me think about this while Lee was talking was Job. So Job, which he's not one that was like, running away from God or anything like that. But he was a man after God and lost everything. And in him losing everything, it didn't cause him to actually run away from God, but actually come to God in that. And I thought that's just a good example of what to do in times of dire circumstances, to pray to God, come to God, and do all those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we see Paul and Silas do this, and potentially some of the other guys there, that in their bad circumstances use it as an opportunity to focus on God and pray to God. And Pastor Lee brings up 2 Chronicles 7. Do you want to read that one?
Yes, 2 Chronicles 7, verse 14. If my people, who are called by my name, humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land.
Yeah, and so this is obviously disconnected from the passage that we're in. This is
Yes.
Old Testament passage, and so Lee brought up this passage as like, let's look at the principles surrounding prayer that God set up here. And so those principles they point out here are that if my people who are called by name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, I will hear, I will forgive, and I will heal. Those things. And without going too deep into this, one of the things that I like that he pointed out was the humility aspect of like the important part of prayer, particularly worship, is that has to come from a place of humility before God.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's not that we approach God because we know or we think that, oh, hey, I've been doing really good in my life. I've been living righteously, and I'm better than all of these other people. So thank you, God, that it's like the Pharisee and the tax collector parable. God, that's not a prayer that God is very quick and ready to listen to.
Thank you that I am not like Judah over there.
Right.
Hey.
Right. Rather, coming to God humbly like the tax collector who can't even look up to heaven. He's beating his chest. Say, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. And then Jesus poses the question, which one of these walked away, doing the right thing in God's eyes that day? And they're like, well, the tax collector, not the Pharisee. And so, humility is a big part of the way we have to approach God.
Yeah. And that's there's multiple passages that talk about this, and one of my favorite ones, I can't remember the passage off the top of my head, but it basically talks about how it's God's job to exalt, and it's our job to humble. And a quote that I like is that it's God's job to exalt, it's our job to humble. If we try to do God's job, He will do our job. And we see that in Revelation where it says every knee will bow. And so it's like you can either humble yourself before God willingly now, or He will humble you before Him in the second coming. And so the great thing about humbling ourselves before God, and what we mean by humbling, is you come before God not with like an arrogance, not trying to make yourself like God, not trying to make yourself better than you are, but a sobering reality of I'm a sinner standing before a holy God. That's humbling yourself. And so whenever you come before God low and humble, He will exalt you. Yeah. That's the whole gospel, is that God trades our humility and shame for Jesus' righteousness and exaltation.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's all based on Jesus.
Yeah.
Because Jesus humbled Himself, right? He took the form of a servant. He emptied Himself. He came in the form as a man. He humbled Himself that way, all the way and he was obedient to the cross. And so, as a result, God exalted him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that Lee mentioned in coming to God humbly in our prayers is that God wants prayers from the heart. He doesn't want just canned prayers. He doesn't want God is great, God is good, let's thank him for this food. He doesn't want that. He wants like genuine, like pouring yourself out to God. And this made me think of my daughter praying.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know how fun it is to listen to kids pray.
Oh, man.
Until Lottie started praying. Do you have any times, memorable moments that you want to share with your kids praying?
Yeah. Especially Joanna, she's 3, same age as Lottie is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the older kids, they like to take turns, especially before we pray at meals and things like that. And so sometimes Joni, she'll weigh in and she'll decide that she's going to take it upon herself to pray. Mm-hmm. But it's usually she's like doing a half whisper and speaking gibberish. And then she gets to the end and very excitedly, amen, pops up. And it's like, yeah, it's a good job. You did it. Yeah.
Yes.
It's super cute.
Yes. With Lottie, before we go to bed each night, we'll read a book. And Randy's better at this. She'll ask Lottie, it's like, okay, who should we pray for? Because she knows if we just let Lottie go, like the prayer will just go anywhere. And so we'll ask, like, what friends do you want to pray for or whatnot? And then we'll pray. But it's so funny. Like Lottie, when she prays, it's almost like she just looks around the room and whatever she sees, that's what she prays for. And so she has a little baby shark pillow. And so she'll say, like, Lord, I pray for baby shark and for polka dots and for so on and so forth.
Laundry list.
Yeah, it's just whatever. There's one time she doesn't. I don't think she does this anymore, but she would pray, and I think what she was trying to say, like, God help us do this or help us do whatever, but she would get her words confused, and she would say, I help you. And so it's like she's like assistant God in this moment. It's like, I help you with this. I help you with this. And it's like, no. We're not coming to God to say, I help you.
Right.
We're coming to God to say, like, you help us.
That sounds like our bad doctrine of the week.
Yeah, right. Yeah. My God. But it's so funny. If you have a small child and you do not pray with them, pray with them.
Oh, yeah.
And just listen to what they say. It's so precious and so sweet because it's just from the heart.
Oh, yeah.
It's whatever's on their mind. That's what comes out. There's no like front that they're trying to put on.
Right.
Here.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, which is probably would do us well to come at it from that angle as well. Like if we've had a bad day, like just be honest with God. Just be like, God, this has been a bad day, and I need your help.
Yep.
In trying to deal with this. Like God's not dumb.
Right.
Like He knows what's going on, and the whole point of prayer is for us to come, present ourselves before the Lord humbly, and all cards on the table. If you try to put on a front, then you end up looking like the Pharisee.
Yep.
And that. But yeah, it made me think of Lottie praying, which is fun. But yeah, so that's the first thing that we see in this little, quote unquote worship service with Paul is that they prayed, and what's the next thing they did?
They sang.
They sang. That's it.
Yeah.
It's simple. They prayed and they sang. All right, we'll see y'all tomorrow. No, so they sang, and Pastor Lee mentioned we don't know if they were great singers or not. As a bunch of prison guys, my guess is they probably weren't great singers.
You never know.
You never know.
But they didn't have to be. That's the point.
They didn't have to be.
Yes.
That was exactly the point. But have you ever thought about why do we sing? Why is singing part of worship? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, some. Not very often because it's it's part of what we do. We sing, and God in His Word tells us to sing. So that's a pretty good reason right there for singing.
Have you ever thought about how odd that might look to someone. So like let's say someone has a zero church experience, has no clue what church is, and they walk in, and one of the first things we do is we all stand up and just start singing songs. I wonder if that's jarring to someone who has no experience with it. They're like, all these people are singing together. This is weird. I've been to concerts, and concerts fun. Like we all have a good time and like watch whoever's playing. But this isn't a concert that's going on. This is like there's lyrics on the screen, and we're all literally singing together, which is not a new thing,
right?
By any means. We see in the Old Testament often. So the one that comes to my mind is. Whenever the Israelites are walked through the Red Sea and God saves them from the Egyptians, what's the first thing they do? They write a song.
Yeah, song
and they
Moses.
sing.
Yep.
And there's something like inherent, I think, within humanity, but particularly within Christianity, of like that's just the way that we've always expressed ourselves to God is we sing songs. And I think maybe one of the reasons it's such a good avenue is it's so easy to unify us together on that, where it's like, have you ever heard those like singing your own song to the Lord moments? It's usually more like charismatic.
Are they all singing different songs at once?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. They'll say that, they'll sing, the official song together, and then they'll move into everyone singing your own song to the Lord. And literally everyone's making up their own song. So it's just this.
Oh, so it's not like a song that everybody or that people already know individually. It's they
no.
make up their own
They
song.
literally are making up on the spot. And so you just have, 50, 100, a couple 100,000 people, whatever. They're all singing their own song. It's just this choir of almost like a orchestra. Have you ever been to orchestra beforehand where they're all just like,
warming
practicing and warming up? And so I imagine it probably sounds like that. But anyways, aside from that, not really any pertinence to this conversation. But what singing does is it kind of unifies us.
Yeah.
And we're all singing and thinking and communicating the exact same thing at the exact same time. Corporate worship.
That's it.
There we go.
And singing, God does tell us to sing to Him, but at the same time, man, there's a lot of benefits even for us. So on one level, yes, we're singing to make music and to praise and to worship God, but at the same time, songs and singing, it's a way that we can really turn our attention to God, and it really stir our affections for Him and what He's done for us. And so that's another really good reason to sing.
That's one of the things I normally say if I'm ever doing the intro or if I'm talking about worship. I'll usually use the word remind. Like we're gathered here together to remind ourselves about the truth of God. Because, the songs that we're singing, most likely, we're not learning anything deeply theologically new in those songs. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's like a lot of songs are centered around the gospel, and a lot of us already know the gospel. Right. But it's not about just knowing the gospel. We sing the songs because we're reminding ourselves of the gospel because we forget.
Oh, yeah. We have to be constantly reminded of the gospel.
We forget that we're sinners in need of God, and we forget that God died on the cross for us. And we might like know that God died on the cross for us, but we've emotionally and spiritually kind of disconnected that knowledge from our hearts. And it's like, while we can like logically wrap our minds around, God died for us on the cross, we've lost the emotional and spiritual heaviness of God coming and dying on the cross for us. And so that's why we sing, to remind ourselves of the truth of God and stir up.
And then in response, then that's one example wherein emotions are a really good thing, right? A good thing to experience is when it's based on God's truth and what He's done for us, because when the weight of that really settles on you and hits you, then that does elicit an emotional response, because we know, what we deserve. We know what we've really earned, and the fact that God doesn't give us that He's gracious and merciful to us, man, that just really draws out those affections.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, and typically speaking, in worship songs, there's two categories. There's songs of declaration and songs of response. So songs of declaration is singing, "This is what God did. This is who God is," and songs of response are more of, "Okay, now what am I going to do because of that truth?"
Right.
So like, and every song has a little bit of both in it. But like, "This is Amazing Grace" by Phil Wickham. A song of declaration. Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? It's just, every line is just declaring what God did, who God is. And then songs like "Great Are You, Lord." It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise. And that's more of a song of response, or like "I surrender all." A song of response is I'm now taking these truths that I just sung about and reminded ourselves about, and now I'm going to internalize that and then pour back out a response because of that.
Yep.
A doxology, if you will.
Yes.
As the Bible, a term used in the Bible. And so singing very much plays a very important process, even though it doesn't always seem like it does. It does. It unifies the church together on the truths of God, reinvigorates our hearts when done properly, and then elicits a response back out to it. And as you mentioned, the Bible calls us to sing. Do you have those passages pulled up? Lee went through a few. I can read them if you don't.
Yeah.
You do? Okay.
The first one is Hebrews 2:12. "I will tell of your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation, I will sing your praise." Ephesians 5, 19. Addressing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing and making melody to the Lord with your heart, giving thanks always and for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. And then James 5:13. Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praise.
Yeah, and so we see often in the Bible it's talking about singing songs for those reasons. And what should come, that very last one, is like, is anyone happy? Let him sing songs of praise. That's where we saw a lot of those songs in the Bible that were written came out of moments of happiness, right? Like the Song of Moses. Some say that when Eve was first made, that the first thing that Adam did is like a poetic song.
Poetry. Yep.
He wooed her with his music.
Yes.
We see, was it Elizabeth or Mary that sang a song after hearing? I think it was Mary sang a song after hearing that she was going to give birth to Jesus, or was it Elizabeth?
I don't remember.
One of those two sang a song. I can't remember.
I'll have to go look.
But it always came out of times of like joy and like, okay, God did something. Okay, let's write this down and sing it now. I don't know if they actually wrote it down, but they would sing it now.
The ones in the Bible, they did.
Yeah, right. And so our song should always be based on, or singing in our songs and our worship should always be based on like joy and happiness and what God's doing and what God has done. And whenever you strip God from songs, it's just songs. Right. So there was this, I didn't look into it beforehand, so I forgot the church name, or it's not even a church. There's this guy who loved the morality and the camaraderie of church, yet was an atheist. And so his goal was to create a community of people who centered around the morality and the community of church, yet stripped it of God completely. Sounds weird, right?
That sounds very weird.
Yeah.
First question is, how are you going to create a body of people, of moral people, without God in the picture? Here's the classic. By what standard?
Yeah. Well, So here's the interesting thing: is listening to it on a debate is between a Christian and this guy talking about, can you have church without God? And this guy was so fervently passionate about this movement that I can't remember the name of it that they were trying to do. but he expressed his issues with it is like we just can't seem to like grow. And I'm like, yeah, I wonder why.
Right.
You can't have, the morality and the community of the church without God. God is the foundation and the center of it all.
Yeah.
Like once you remove that, it's like, why are we here?
He founded the church.
Yeah.
He establishes it.
And it's like, you might come. It's like, oh, I'm having fun. There's people around us. But then like, there's no power there. It's like, it's just people hanging out. Which is cool, I guess, but like,
Right. But don't call it church.
Yeah, you can't build a community. I don't think they call it church.
Oh, okay.
They call it something else. But you can't really build a sustained, deeply cored community of people when you don't really have anything that you're united on. Right. Anyways, all that say is, out of this there was a group of people who wanted to put together a secular church service. I don't know if it's the same group of people.
Are these those videos you showed me a while back?
Maybe where they're like meeting in the gym or something. Yeah. So their goal was to let's have a secular church service, and they had a band up there, and they were singing. They wanted to sing songs together, and so they were singing. What song was it? Like "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey.
That one's pretty universal. I mean, to be fair,
like songs like that, like karaoke songs. And so they had a band up there playing it, and they had the lyrics up on the screen, and everyone's gathered together singing it. Right. And then a guy gets up there and gives a little TED talk about whatever, I don't know, and then they dismiss. I don't know, but it's one of those things of like, it has all of the appearance of church on there, yet you look in on it and you're like, what are y'all doing? Why? Like, don't get me wrong, "Don't Stop Believing's a good song.
Don't stop believing what?
Yeah, right. It's like this is just weird. Whenever you strip the reason why you gather together, all of a sudden it's like we're just singing to sing, and we're just doing whatever. And that's like the power of God being in the center of the worship service. That if God is in the center, then now there's a reason that we've gathered together. Now there's a reason that we're singing. There's a reason why we're proclaiming and declaring these truths, because there's a God who has saved us and redeemed us, and now that elicits joy and happiness out into the form of song. Yep. Remove that, and you're like, now it's just a bunch of people who can't sing gathered together singing 80s hits. Right. It's just weird at that point, which is why it never lasts. Yeah. Yeah, because you can't gather and sing together consistently around nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
absolutely right. So
that's why we sing. You may have wondered, why do we sing in church? That's why we sing, to remind ourselves of the truths of God and then stir in our hearts a response back to God. Yep. Yeah. Any other thoughts about singing?
No, I think that's good.
Do you want to sing a song right now?
Dude, I would love to sing a song.
All right.
But the question is, does anyone want to hear me sing a song?
I want to hear a song. Judah, can you? Oh, Judah's shaking his head no. Well, I was a vote yes. Judah was a vote no. And so, unless it's unanimous, I guess we got to say no.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm sorry, everyone. If you want to hear Jacob sing, just comment down below. That's right. If we get 10 comments.
Let's say, man, that's a low bar, but now that's a pretty high bar, I think.
If we get 10 comments saying, yes, Jacob sings, then I will bring my guitar next week and we'll have Jacob sing a song.
That's right. It's a great way to tank the podcast really fast. Yeah. But, that's okay. We'll see what happens.
You're going to go report the video so it gets pulled from YouTube. Yeah.
For copyright or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or inappropriate content. This will hurt your ears.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's what they did. They prayed and they sang. Lee mentioned there was actually no sermon, and so you can't have worship services without sermons. And worship doesn't have to include sermons. But they prayed and they sang. Then what happened after they prayed and they sang?
Oh, man. There was an earthquake.
There was an earthquake.
And then not just Paul and Silas, not only did their jail cell door open and swing open. All of them swung open.
Mm-hmm.
And then their bonds were all loosed. They were all freed from the stocks that they were in or the chains that they were in. And the jailer realizes what happens. He wakes up, so he's sleeping through their worship. It seems like he was bored.
That means that that means that they were good singers because they put him to sleep.
Yeah, lulled him to sleep.
Maybe so.
Yeah, there you go. So the jailer draws his sword and he's ready to kill himself. And I think Pastor Lee mentioned sort of the background on that. It's not like today if there's a jailbreak, then they figure out which guard it was that somehow dropped the ball, if they even did drop the ball. Because prisoners, especially those that have been in prison a long, long time, it seems like they get pretty creative you have nothing else to do if you're not worshiping, I guess. Thinking of ways to escape. But it's not like we go and execute prison guards for escaped prisoners nowadays, but back then that's what they would do, and that's the incentive to be sure that nobody in your charge better escape jail.
Yeah, because at best they just dropped the ball.
Yep.
Which put other people in danger.
Right.
At worst, they colluded with them, which obviously put other people in danger. And so, in both cases, they're like, no, you get the death penalty for that.
You're clearly not a very good jailer, so we have no use for you, basically.
Our legal system is much more lenient these days.
Way more lenient.
But anyways, yes. So that's why he went to kill himself. He's like, I'd rather just kill myself now than have them. I wonder if they would have hung him on the cross. I wonder if they would have viewed that as treason.
It probably depends on whether he was a citizen, a Roman citizen or not. There were probably different factors, but whatever they would have done to him, just falling on his sword was a better option.
So he's about to kill himself. Paul, out of the darkness, says, don't do it. Don't kill yourself. We're all here. There's no need for anyone to die today. And this guy was so blown away that they did not seize the opportunity to just flee, which Paul and Silas are better guys than I am. I would maybe. But they didn't seize that opportunity. They stayed there and said, hey, we're still here. We're still here. And what happened because of that?
Well, it says that the jailer, he's trembling with fear. He rushes in, and it's interesting. He calls for lights. So apparently there's other jailers there around.
Or maybe they had a light switch.
Yeah,
maybe they had light bulbs figured out.
It was all, hey Siri, turn on the lights. He calls for lights. My Siri just turned on. Just imagine this guy's panic, right? When the earthquake happens, maybe he hears all the doors opening, and there's got to be the noise of chains happening at the same time. It all wakes him up, and it's like when, I don't know, you realize it's like you've forgotten something that was really important, and like your heart sinks, and you just it's like panic mode, or maybe you slept through your alarms. Like I've done this. Oh man, I slept through all my alarms, and I'm supposed to be at work like 5 minutes ago, and I'm not awake, and anyway, that sense of panic, but like amplified because he knows what this means for his life. So he rushes in, trembles, and with fear, and he falls down before Paul and Silas. And then, this is enough to convince him, right? And he asks them, he says, sirs, what must I do to be saved? And they tell him, they preach the gospel to him. And he responds positively to that. He and his whole family all are saved as well. They presumably hear the gospel, and they're all baptized as well, which is pretty powerful. If you think about it, Paul and Silas, they could have escaped, sort of like how Peter was Peter, right? That the angel came and helped him escape out of jail, I think. So they could have done that. They could have just left, and they didn't. And so true to form, They're really there as ministers of the gospel first and foremost. Their own lives, okay, whatever. But they're ready to share the gospel with anyone that'll hear.
Yeah, well, and the cool thing that happened here is, like, all of their worship, all their praying, all their singing set the stage for what was about to happen. Because no doubt he was there.
Yeah.
He heard all of this
Right.
going on, like, as he watched them. And he probably thought they were kooks, right? Just like, anyone who isn't a Christian is like, why do you all gather together and sing and
Right.
pray?
Well, and it's also like you have to wonder, with the ancient sort of pagan idea of having many, many different gods, and if this is the god of these people over here, well, their God obviously must not care very much about them if he's allowed them to be beaten and thrown in jail. It's like, oh yes, very powerful God that you
Yes,
have.
yes.
Like, oh, I'm not scared. But then it had to have been, at least in some ways, a response to the praying and the singing, and then this miracle happening that this guy's like, oh, like, no, their God is the real deal.
Yeah, because essentially, them not leaving, they saved his life.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's that element to it. There's the element of, oh, your God did this, and then there's the element of, not only did your God did this, but y'all have shown mercy to me. Like, you could have bettered yourself, but instead of bettering yourselves, you lowered yourselves, humbled yourselves, and looked out for my needs.
They
here in
love
this
their
moment.
neighbor.
They love their neighbor. And so, like, all of their actions that was going on beforehand is now being supported by, all of their praying and singing and proclamations about who God is and who they are is now being supported by their actions
Yep.
in this moment. And that's a really powerful thing, is that people can look on what we say as a church and what we say as Christians and what we sing and what we proclaim, but that's the logical part of it. But that logical part will only move to the heart whenever they see that backed up by true fruit and actions. And so that's probably a good reminder for us that as we gather together and pray and sing, those are great things, and that's how we worship God. But don't forget to have that move into our fruit as we deal with other people. So that way our proclamation and our actions line up together.
Yeah.
And people get saved.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And yeah, I mean, it's one of the things I think is really incredible about this, isn't just that, this jailer was saved, but that even his whole family at the same time. So it's not like, put yourself in the jailer's shoes. Okay, these two guys over here who've been arrested and beaten and thrown in jail, like, they're probably not the guys that you would think to have as dinner guests at your house, right? But that's exactly what he does. He takes them.
Hopefully he
home.
gave them clothes before
Yeah,
they took them home.
surely.
Which, how did he get them home?
I don't know. I do have
Is
a lot
he
of
on the
questions
run
about
now?
this. He might be.
Yeah, the jailer's now on the run.
Yeah.
We're ready to go.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what he does is, he takes it, the jailer takes it a step further, and not only does he believe, but he's like, hey, come to my house. Let me feed you, maybe regain some of their strength and those things. And he washes their wounds. And then it says he was baptized at once, he and his family.
In the bathtub.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's also an interesting question.
Where'd they go? Well, I guess they had bodies of water around
Yeah,
them.
they did.
Pretty easily could find one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does raise a question about mode, I guess, but we don't want to read too much into the text.
Don't want to get too deep into the denominational divides.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, especially in verse 34, it says that the jailer, then he brought them up into his house and set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. And so Paul and Silas, their prayers, their singing hymns to God, and their worship, despite those circumstances, has bled over. This man has been converted, he and his family. They become believers, and now they're rejoicing. and seemingly having their own worship service there in their home.
Now they're singing songs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like a pyramid scheme. It's like it just you just recruit other people to sing songs underneath you.
He's Paul and Silas clearly were trying to form a worship band.
Yeah,
They needed a bass player, so
it's like the jailer. It's like, you have an awfully low resonant voice. Are you a bass singer? Right. We've been looking for a bass. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, before we got into that, it's real. I think it's beautiful.
I never thought about that way of like what started in singing ended in singing.
Yeah, that's right.
That's cool. Cool. All right. Well, that's a little bit of what good worship looks like, what really good worship looks like. If I would have named the sermon, but the power of wonderful worship looks like that. You got Paul and Silas in prison for their faith, and didn't use that awful circumstances as a chance for complaining or grumbling, but rather as an opportunity for worship. And what we see in their worship is prayer and singing. And out of their humble prayers and out of their humble singing and truths to God, God responded. And not only were they set free, but they were actually able to share and witness to the jailer, and he and his family were set free spiritually.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. And so, anyways, we're going to keep going next week with this theme of worship because I get to preach.
Ooh, all right.
And we're going to talk more about worship and fun things, but I'm not going to spoil too much of it.
No sneak peek?
No sneak. Well, we're going to be in Revelation.
Oh.
That's our sneak peek for you.
Fun.
But we're going to dig a little bit into why we worship, which we talked a little bit about today.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a special guest on next week to get some different different thoughts. Anyways, let's move into the bad doctrine of the week. And hopefully y'all don't know too much about this one. Okay, so bad doctrine of the week. There's this lady named Lily Alcott. I didn't know who she is. Hopefully y'all don't know who she is because she is a I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. She's on OnlyFans, which is if you don't know what that is, it's a promiscuous website. Let's put it that way. It's a website you probably shouldn't be on, where girls can create profiles and guys can pay them money to see inappropriate photos.
Gotcha.
And or videos or whatever. Anyways, so hopefully you don't know who she is. But this girl, Lily Alcott, was in an interview with Piers Morgan. And in this interview, he was basically asking her, it's like this line of profession that you've chosen to work in, like aren't you like sure it pays really well, like you're making all this money, but aren't you like concerned with like the shame aspect that brings on your family and the immorality of it and all these different like things? And she was basically having none of it. Like she didn't care at all. It's like for her, I'm making money. That's all I care about. And one of the things he asked her was, like, aren't you concerned that your kids are going to see what you do and be like just devastated by that? And what she said was awful. She said that her kids can cry about it in their Ferraris.
Wow.
Yeah, not great.
No.
So let's talk about that statement. So essentially what she's saying is I don't care if my kids cry or upset or horrified at what I do. They've got stuff and they've got things. And so they can cry about it. I don't care. We got money.
Right. Not just stuff and things. Ferraris. Big stuff. Wow.
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Well, first off, man, there's just like every week. It seems like every week the bad doctrine that we find. There's so many different ways to cut it. Number one is we're created in God's image, right? And we all have this inherent value. And since the fall, right there, we do have shame, or we're supposed to anyway. For when it comes to our bodies. And so obviously, shouldn't feel like I shouldn't even have to say this, but putting yourself out there in that position on a website like OnlyFans in that way seems to be it's very, very contradictory to the way that God would have us to function and to live just ourselves, right? Not even thinking right now about the effect of everybody that consumes those images and is sort of participating on that website, I guess. So that's number one. There should be some shame involved in doing that. Shame's not always a bad thing, right? I mean, sometimes shame does serve us, right?
Yeah, there's that verse. I don't know where. I think it's in First Peter that says, "Godly grief or godly guilt pushes us to repentance, and worldly guilt pushes us to destruction."
Yeah,
and so guilt, shame can be good.
Yeah,
because it's conviction,
right?
About the state of things or the state of what you're doing, and the whole point of conviction is to push you to repentance.
Right, and part of the way that our culture has gone is a no shame culture. So it doesn't matter what I do, what I think, what I say. It doesn't matter how I make money. You can't make me feel shame about it, or how dare you bring it up. A lot of the times is the response that you get. I'm going to live my life. It doesn't affect you. Don't worry about it. I feel no shame.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this before, where there is shame. Like, we all have shame.
Oh, yeah.
It's a reality of life. We have shame of the sin that we do, and from a Christian perspective, that shame pushes you to God, and we can't alleviate our shame, but God can. We can try to create fig leaf clothing for us, like Adam and Eve did, but that will never cover our shame. So God created animal skin coverings, implying a death occurred to cover our shame. So from a Christian perspective, we can't alleviate our shame. God can. But from a non-Christian perspective, the shame is still there. It's still a reality of life, and so you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so you can't alleviate it. Like, literally, you yourself can't alleviate the shame. So what's the next best thing? Pretend it's not there.
Yep.
Just redefine everything, and just shove it down as deep as you can, which is where a lot of this, probably from third wave feminism, is where you can't. Like if a woman wants to demoralize herself and devalue herself in exchange for money, who are you to say that that's wrong?
That's right. She's free, and she can do that, and she should do that because she is free, and she should be proud of her body and all these things and show it off. And
and I would hear not even liberal people, like progressive, far left progressive usually takes that approach. But even people that are center, libertarian, would kind of take the approach of hey, I don't agree with it, but if that's what makes you happy, then go about it. And I would go a little bit further and say no, you shouldn't do that, because even though you think that that's what's fulfilling you in this moment, you're devaluing yourself, and that's not what's going to lead to happiness.
Right.
It's just, there's no way that objectifying yourself and turning it's not turning your labor into a product, it's turning you into a product. And there's many different reasons why that's not good. You're selling yourself off to the highest bidder, which is not a good thing. But just in your own personal intrinsic value, it's you're just slowly just chipping away at your internal value. And that doesn't mean that you're not valuable to God, but you're slowly reprogramming yourself to not be made in the image of God, in how you think of yourself.
Right.
You're just devaluing yourself.
And then the practical outworking of that, if let's say that this woman who's on OnlyFans, I don't know what her marital status is, or if she's in any kind of a relationship.
At some point, she had to be. She has kids.
Well, in some kind of relationship.
In some kind.
Anyway. But the question is, Okay, what kinds of guys are you going to be attracting by putting yourself out there in that way and presenting yourself that way? Not the ones that you want. You know,
maybe.
I mean, right? Or like,
Depends on what they're looking for.
not from a Christian perspective.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah. And so that's one. And then, it's the image of God and being devalued in that way is definitely one effect there. But the other issue that she really, her real response is the money, is the cash. So who cares what the kids think? When they realize what mom has been doing, but they can cry about it in their Ferraris. So she's justifying it really first and foremost as a way of making money, and not just making ends meet like she's forced into it, but like, oh, we're going to go and get the nicest, best stuff, and which is something that we as fallen creatures do tend to struggle with is money, right? Jesus talks a lot about money, for example, like the Sermon on the Mount is a great example. You can't serve both God and mammon or money. That way, it's if our hearts belong to money, you don't have you can't be a servant and serve two masters, basically. Yeah. And so, do you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, on the money side, it's like money's not the end all be all. This is coming. I love finances. I drive my wife crazy because I'm like a budgeter. Like I'll sit and pull up bank statements and look at stuff just because I enjoy that. I like numbers. I was a math guy in high school, and so it's really easy for me to drift into that money side of like, and I will if left unchecked, I will sacrifice values for money, and like. And my wife is like a great balance to me because she's very much on the other side of like she sees value first and money second, and so she is the better half on that particular topic where she's like pulling me to that side and saying like, hey, it's not all about the end all be all like money, like there's money is a tool to be used for life, and if that tool is becoming the goal, then you're missing the point. Right. And so if people, this isn't the case here, but even if people say, oh, they're doing it just to make ends meet, well, at some point, it's like if you're trying to stay alive, if you're trying to stay alive by making money this way, yet you're losing the value of life, let's find another way. Yeah. Let's find another way. That's not even happening here, though. It's not, they're, like you said, they're not trying to make ends meet. They're just trying to make as much money as possible. And at the end of the day, it's like Jesus said, like, if you gain the whole world, yet lose your soul, who cares?
Yep.
Right?
You've gained nothing.
You've gained nothing. You can't take it with you when you die.
Yep.
So who cares? And maybe, they're atheist or nihilistic. And so it's just an empty void afterwards anyways, and so might as well just build my own empire here.
That's right.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. I feel bad for a lot of ladies that are have bought into that lifestyle because like they're more valuable than that. And guys, like the reason that they've bought into that is because there are guys who will feed it.
Yep.
And so it's not even completely their fault. They're responsible for their actions, but they wouldn't be doing that if there was no market there.
Right. And
guys, it's insane how much money these ladies make on the top of the charts. I was seeing something the other day, like the number one earner on that site made $50 million a month.
Oh my gosh.
A month. It's the market is insane. 9 out of 10 guys, studies show, struggle with that. 1 out of 3 girls struggle with that. And one of the things that we got to do on our end of the spectrum is say, even if these people are consenting, and even if these people are like that's what quote unquote makes them happy, that doesn't change how we should view it.
Right.
And we should always come at it from a place of kindness and a place of compassion, in that hey, I care for you as a person. Like, not only are you a daughter of God, but you're a daughter of someone, like an actual person, and you have family, and you have dignity in yourself, and I'm going to have compassion on you and kindness on you, even if you don't have compassion and kindness on yourself. Yeah. And I'm just not going to participate in this. And so that's how we need to do it. Again, there wouldn't be ladies doing that if there wasn't a market for it.
Right.
And so guys need to step up as well on that. Anyways, any final thoughts?
I have a memory. You brought up the way that you and Randy handle money or handle spending money a little bit. I have a memory years ago. We think we had a young adults gathering at y'all's house, and my wife Sam was there, and so our two wives were talking, and it came up that Randy really thought that she needed a new rug for one of the rooms that y'all have. Do you remember this?
Vaguely, yeah.
And so it became a conversation, and there were some of the young adult guys that and we're talking about it, and I'm kind of being quiet at first, and so I don't remember which one it was, but he goes, "Oh man, whatever, that rug is just fine. She doesn't need another one," and they're unmarried, they don't know what it's like exactly being married, and so. Somebody asked me what I thought, and I'm like, let her buy the rug.
Get the rug.
Just get the rug.
Get the rug.
If it makes her happy.
Yeah.
Okay, just, if you got money in the bank, just get the rug, pull the trigger. It'll be great.
We've had to meet in the middle a lot on that, just because it pains me. I'm such a tightwad. That pains me to spend money, even if I like whatever we're getting.
I'm the same way on some things. So a lot of times when my wife wants to buy things, I'm just like, okay, sure, buy it, whatever. Last night, we were sitting on our couch, and I don't remember how in the world this came up, but she looks at me and she goes, Reagan says that we need, Reagan's our 6-year-old daughter, Reagan says that we need couch pillows. And I said, no. We got these. She bought these big fancy pillows for the bed, and they spend
throw pillows
more time.
Is what they call it.
Whatever.
Because you throw them.
Yeah, exactly. They spend more time on the floor and in the way. And I'm like, the last thing we need is to clutter up the living room more than it is with all the kid stuff all the time. No, we don't. Yep. We don't need throw pillows for the couch. Like, you're killing me.
Judah, are you pro throw?
Pro throw.
Pro throw? Are you pro throw?
Yes.
He's pro throw pillows.
He's pro throw the pillows out because you don't need them, right?
Oh, okay.
Get them out of here.
That's what he meant.
Okay, that's what you mean. Pro throw the pillows out, not pro have the throw pillows.
I only have one pillow.
One pillow. That's all you need. Actually, I have two.
I have two.
One to lay on, one to hold.
I have two to lay on, but over time they've kind of gotten squished to the point where I need to.
Yeah.
Because I don't get new pillows. We talked about this recently.
Oh yeah, my wife hates it because I have the same pillow for the past 10 years.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Because you can't change.
Yeah.
Because then your sleep is messed up.
She's like, that pillow's gross. You need a new one, and I'm like, it's still good. I like it.
You're like, stop trying to spend money.
Yeah, I put a pillow sheet over it, anyways.
Yeah, that's right. You don't even see the actual pillow.
Yeah.
And then you wash the pillowcase. That's it.
Yeah.
Pillowcase. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little side quest there, or side conversation.
Money's not everything.
That's right. Way to bring it back.
The image of God is more important than money. Yes.
Amen.
Okay. Judah, you got any thoughts?
We made it to an hour and 8 minutes.
Hour and 8 minutes,
all
eh?
right.
There we go. That's 20 minutes shorter than last week. All right. Well, if y'all don't have anything else, we're glad that y'all joined us. I forgot to mention this. If you made this far, like, subscribe, comment. Remember, if we get 10 comments suggesting that Jacob sings, we'll sing next week. And so do those comments. We've got one comment here. Judah, I'm pointing at you. You go comment. I'll go comment. That's 2 already.
Oh, man.
I bet I can get the staff to comment. That's another, 5 or so. So we just need a couple of comments, guys. A couple of comments. and we'll have Jacob sing a song next week.
Careful what you wish for.
Yes. Anyways, we're glad that y'all joined us here today. We'll be back next week. We look forward to seeing you. Y'all have a good day.